It's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
Introducing the Blazor Power Hour.
No, seriously, it's time for Blazor Power Hour.
Hey friends, it's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
You're checking out the Blazor Power Hour.
Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
It's Blazor Power Hour. Go Ed.
It's time for the Blazor Power Hour. And the chat box.
That is probably the most epic intro.
Completely is.
Bookended by none other than Daniel Roth and Layla herself. Welcome to the show, Layla.
Hey Ed, it's so good to be back.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you. If folks are just joining, this is usually the Blazor Power Hour. We're gonna go a little bit on a topic that's useful with Blazor, but it isn't necessarily Blazor. So we're going to talk about expression trees today. I invited Layla on because I was over watching her fabulous show one day and saw her writing some entity framework queries. And I thought this would be something that could help when you're in those scenarios where you're writing those entity framework link queries and things. And it just kind of gives you a little insight to what's going on inside the black box. So next time you're in there writing queries, you can like go at it like a freaking ninja hacker.
Ooh, a ninja hacker. That sounds very unlike me. Normally I'm like, let's try this. Plop. Far from a ninja hacker.
I'm sure people have seen my show on Friday, and it is a lot of that. It's a lot of let's refactor this later because I'm just gonna make it work right now. Like that's usually how I roll.
Oh yes.
Alyssa will be joining us shortly. I think she got stuck in traffic or something. You know how those live streams from home, you can get stuck in traffic pretty easy. So I'm just teasing. She got sidetracked with something. She will be on shortly. Eva, hey Eva, how are you doing this morning? I fixed the tags on the show, by the way. She always tells me to fix our stream tags because I'm terrible with that. I know, right? That's why we can't have nice things.
Do it right, Ed. Do it right.
So I actually brought slides to the show. That's how exciting this is going to be today. So I'll share those here for everybody to see. Yeah,
I love a visual aid.
We do need visual aids for this because it is quite the deep dive topic. And there are things that we need to visualize. And I'm going to be doing like a lot of unit tests. And because this is a very like back-endy thing, so it's not like UI is so easy to present like on topics because you have things to look at, right? It's like, I'm going to build this thing today, and you get to see it as I build it. When you write back-end code on a stream, you're like, I'm just typing code and nothing's happening on the screen. So
yeah, story of my life.
Yeah, exactly.
I used to do full stack development, and I used to do a lot more in the front end. But so much, especially when I was at Twilio, was just back end, a lot of functions, and I barely touched the front end. And it's amazing how quickly you lose that muscle. I really enjoyed doing a lot with Blazor, to be honest, because it's just so nice to see something come up on screen and look ugly.
And look ugly. It's a lot of fun though. Like Blazor's extremely fun. I've had a blast just making things with it because you don't have to get bogged down in like all of the tooling that you used to have to do for like JavaScript apps. I know JS apps have come a long way too. Like you don't have that as much anymore, but like in the early days of Angular, like 2 betas in like React, when it was starting to come along, it was like you're just bogged down like Webpack for like 6 hours before you could see Hello World. Ugh, drove me nuts.
The only way I could get anything to work was if I used the templates that came with Visual Studio, and so I'd create a new Angular app with sort of a web API, and that was the only way I could like magically make it work, and I had no idea what was going on. So,
and we said Angular 3 times, so guess who's here?
Oh, she's here, is she?
We said Angular 3 times in the green room. I just saw Alyssa pop in.
Woohoo!
So Alyssa, if you can hear us, bring yourself into the show, because I don't know if you're ready. I don't want to bring you on if you're still adjusting things. But Alyssa is here with us. So the first thing I usually like to talk about with expressions is, Alyssa's here. Hey, Alyssa.
Hey, oh, the ferns. How lovely.
I'm in the ferns.
Sorry about the lateness, darlings. I'm here and excited about expression trees.
Yay.
Is it expression ferns or is it expression trees?
I think we could ferns. It has to be
like,
now.
Yeah.
Close enough.
It's fine.
So, Alyssa, you haven't been doing C# for very long, so this should be a really out of bounds topic that I think you'll find fascinating, but probably not find a whole lot of use for. Actually, there's really a small like fraction of time that you'll actually use expressions directly, but indirectly. It's something that we use a lot. So I was I kind of ask people this question, like, do you use expressions? And people generally don't know they're using expressions. So if you've ever typed anything like this, then you've probably actually used expressions before, just didn't know you were using expressions.
So you're saying this is a C# only concept? Ish.
No? It's a meta programming concept. I think other languages have it. JavaScript has its own type of meta programming, but they don't have expression trees.
I've been doing expressions in Python because I had to start learning Python a few weeks ago, which is not the most enjoyable process, but I'm getting there.
It's not?
No.
Oh.
No. I mean, it's okay. I mean, they have type, which is quite refreshing. So I'm kind of like, yay, it's at least got types, which, some other things don't, not naming any names. But I think I kind of have seen expressions. I mean, I use expressions a lot in C#.
Okay.
So we shall see what happens.
Yeah, so you'll see these if you're using iQueryable. We'll get a little bit more detail on that later. So if you're using this just against array objects and stuff, so an I enumerable, they're actually not expressions per se. We'll kind of disambiguate that in a little bit. But for the most part, if you're using like an entity framework query, you're going to see this. And if you look at the signature for the method call where, you'll actually see it is looking for an expression for the parameter. So that is one place that you will use these quite frequently. AutoMapper uses these as well. So if you're using create map in the APIs for building a mapping, you use expression trees to do that as well. HTML helpers. If you're still doing ASP.NET Core MVC, HTML helpers frequently use expressions as well. So you'll see that quite a bit. These are usually for like property and model accessors and stuff. So that's a really good example. I've written so many HTML helpers back in the day. Like this got to be a pretty casual experience for me. Artelic data grid. That's another one. So like when you're building out your data grids and you're setting up all of those columns, these things are helping you describe what properties are going to go into the columns on that data grid. So you might notice a bit of a trend here where a lot of these things have to do with getting properties off of objects or comparing something on a model. So that'll start to make sense in just a little bit here.
Because you use them on DB set as well, don't you, Ed? A lot when you're doing code first. I think I've used a lot of expressions when doing DB set and defining all the data for the DB context. Is that right? Am I thinking that right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
pretty much anything that has to do with entity framework is done through expressions. So what expressions do is they represent code as data. So this is data about our code. So it's often referred to as metaprogramming. So metaprogramming, you're going to analyze, rewrite, or translate code at runtime. So that's a bit to wrap one's head around. So if we want to analyze our code, we want to inspect different pieces of our code to make decisions to do something. If we want to rewrite code or modify code at runtime. So
it's not really code, right? It's just data.
It is data.
It's like only data. Like if you're not talking about data, you're not like using expression trees, right? Like it's not.
So
that right?
This is. You'll see in a minute that it is actually code.
Okay.
It may not be runnable code at that moment, but you can turn it into runnable code. So it is code. It is code and data at the same time. So you may want to rewrite some code or translate some code. And that's the translate's a big one for entity framework because it's translating C# code into SQL code. So that's one of the major uses for this, is to translate code.
No, you should have had like a subline of avoid SQL at all costs. Like
exactly. In the DBAs in the audience are probably like cringe. Like, I can't believe people use this technology. There's another fun thing about C# that helps all of this make sense and also make it hard to understand at the same time. It's a little something called homoiconicity. So same syntax or executable code as the data representation of code. So these two pieces of code, if you take off the left-hand assignment and only look at the right-hand side, those two pieces of code are absolutely identical, aren't they? So I have a property or a value called +1, and I'm assigning it to n lambda n plus 1. So it's a delegate. The first two lines well, the first line's a comment. Second line is declaring a function that takes an integer and returns an integer as a result. And the name of that function is +1. And then the code for that is it's going to take that n value and add 1 to it and return whatever that result is. The second one is a data representation of it. And you can see the only real difference is that function is wrapped within an expression class. So this is an expression of a function that takes an integer and returns an integer. But the way that you write it on the assignment side is exactly the same as you would write it if it was executable.
I think that monster is there, Eagle.
I did write unit tests for that comment though, so there's that. I mean,
what does that even mean? Hang on. Hang on.
A unit test for the comment.
Well, I mean, Eagle writes a unit test library, so I thought I'd
I gotcha.
make sure I tested my comments.
You got a good. Okay, I'm with you. Okay, but seriously, if we're gonna be for real, like 1 second. Number 2 is a function that I can call, and in the wild, I can just say +1, call you, and it runs +1. Number 5 is a mysterious expression that does what for me now?
That we have yet to learn, Alyssa, but we will learn that soon. So the first one is executable. The second one is data that represents that function above. So
okay, you're just throwing mysteries upon mysteries now. Continue.
So when you look at these assignments, this is what they call homoiconicity, where the executable and the data is exactly the same. We can represent that the same way. Where this gets a little bit kind of tricky is if we go back to this slide here. We don't have that assignment visible to us. We only are we don't have the left hand side visible to us. We only have the assignment section of it. So if you look here at this bit of code where there's just this lambda expression, if you don't look at the signature for the method, and you don't see that we're assigning this as an expression of a func of whatever, then you're typing in this lambda expression and you don't know if it's executable, if it's metadata. That's homoiconicity at work. To the end user, you don't have to type something special because this is metadata. It's just the compiler knows what the type is, so it's going to assign it to the right type, but the expression is typed the same way as the code is. So you kind of can get lost as to the context of how this is being used, which normally doesn't matter until you maybe get into the weeds on something and it starts to matter. We can get into that later too. So this is starting to form questions more than it's answering questions, I guess.
I mean, I use this all the time, and I'm going like, oh, my brain. So I don't even know what you're feeling like down there, Alyssa.
I have a feeling there's, as always, some context I'm missing because Ed is like,
there is, definitely.
He's like, it's not how we would expect it to be. There's no like types, and it's very mysterious. And I'm like, I don't know, that looks like a normal line to me. Let's slap it and go. Like I don't know what you are used to, because I'm used to some pretty free willy stuff. So I
love this topic because it's something that we all on the .NET side touch on like a daily basis probably, and have zero cares as to how this is actually being executed until something doesn't work just quite the way we want it to, and then we're like, huh. Or we look at any framework and go, it's really cool, but I have no clue what's going on in that black box. I like to know what's inside the black box at all times. I was the kid that always took apart all my toys to see how they worked. Oftentimes they did not get put back together correctly, but at least I got to see how they worked. So that's where this comes from. So if we wanted to write this data representation. And we did not have the opportunity to use this homoiconicity feature. So we couldn't write this lambda expression for some reason, which we'll get to again in just a moment. There's reasons we can't always do this. So this is a developer time experience thing. So when we're in our code editor, we're writing code, we can do this as long as we can write this this type, this expression type. But if we wanted to do something programmatically with an expression, we can't quite just programmatically create these the expression you see on the side here. There's no way to describe this at runtime. This is
You're saying there's no other way to write it?
There's no way to write it with this type of syntax. So there is another way to do this. And this is called an expression factory. So there is a whole factory that we can use to create expressions.
There is?
There is. And it is very, very large library of things that we can do. So you cannot new up in an expression. So you can't say something like new expression and then, create a new expression from that syntax. That's invalid. You have to use the factory. So the factory is a set of static methods that return the expression that you're looking for. Little Star Wars reference there. So you could say expression of constant and pass it in a 1, and then you get like a var of 1. And then you could also say, give me another constant. So var x is 1 again. I have two constants. And then I could say, give me an expression of add, and then add those 2 constants that I created. So now I have created an expression of 1 plus 1. Pretty cool.
I'm confused.
So this this is the same. Let's go into a code editor. We'll bring that up now. We have enough knowledge here. We can talk about this stuff. So this set of code here, this x, y, and sum of x and y, is just like saying say var add. Oh, I can't say add. Var equals, and then x plus y. Kind of like that.
That's cool. You see what Silicon said?
Yes, it is the instructions and not the results. Okay. So if I were to go ahead and console write sum, we can go ahead and run this, and the results are down here at the bottom. The actual result, or the actual return from console write line, is 1 plus 1, because this is an expression. It's not a method. It's not going to add those 2 numbers. It is going to share the metadata of that expression with us, which is 1 add 1. Alyssa looks very...
But not execute it.
It does not execute. It's not executable code. It is metadata about... it's describing that function.
Just looking at Alyssa's face.
Back in the 70s, I wrote code to show how reverse Polish notation works, and I'm getting deja vu. Thank you for that. I feel like that was camaraderie right there.
In my first job, I got yelled at because I called... I was using so-called Polish notation, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. I don't.
That's a thing. Oh man, there's just so many things I have to Google today. Polish notation. First thing I had to Google was some Nathan Fillion meme. I don't. And I was like, yeah, my face does kind of look like that all the time. But
That one. Yeah.
Okay, so I actually was trying to pull up this .NET Fiddle because I didn't know it existed. It's kind of like a code pin for .NET, I guess.
Yes, and there's .NET Interactive, and there's .NET in Jupyter Books. We could go off topic on that. You know, Ed would love us to go off topic.
I'm so excited.
That's good. If we get too far off topic, I've prepared something because I've seen Layla's show for one, and I know how much coding gets done on Layla's show. It's a wonderful show.
What is that supposed to mean? I take offense.
But it gets off the rails, which I love about it. It's very fun.
I'm pouting right now.
It's probably the best. Well, I don't want to say it's the best part of the show because that throws me in another pot of hot water. It is a highlight to the show, though. It is a positive thing.
Keep digging.
And then I've also done
digging.
shows. I've done shows with Alyssa, and I know how Alyssa rolls. So I've prepared a little showstopper here in case things get too off track.
3 hours later.
I want you all to know that I am medicated for my ADHD, and it's a real problem.
Maybe that's my problem.
Okay, but seriously, I wanted to know
so
if
you're
I
saying
could just
3 hours later.
This is gonna get me sent to HR later today.
Oh, it already has. Ed. You've got a meeting scheduled.
Wouldn't be the first, won't be the last.
Okay, so we can write this expression guy's built in. Or no, he's not built in. Do you have like some sort of NPM package of entity that's providing you expression? I'm wording. I know it's not the proper words, but
NPM package. Listen to this.
Nugget package.
Have you ever seen the movie the Village? And they
the one with
talk
Joaquin
about
Phoenix.
I think so.
Yeah.
And they keep saying the one that shall not be spoken or whatever, instead of actually just like calling out the name. That's NPM here on this show. We don't use that word.
It's a swear word. It's a dirty word.
Oh, because you both love yarn so much? Is that where we're going with this?
What's your no?
I got him.
That's just NPM with extra steps. Like who
I
we
got him. Oh, Ed, you just really marginalized like a really big.
It's all right. We have chocolatey for
yarn
our kind of
loving
stuff.
community. Did you say chocolatey? Is that like a new version of Nugget?
No.
That is an application installer. But if you look at the right lines that I have here, this last one is getting the type of the expression, and it gives you the fully qualified namespace for it. So your NPM package, Alyssa, is system.link expressions. So this is the this is the
so you're saying it does not come by
from.
Default. It's not.
It is part of .NET. It is part of .NET.
I feel like
you may have to add a using statement to your code to get this, but it's part of .NET.
I guess that's the confusing part. If it's part of, like, if it's built in, why would you need a using statement? Merp.
Because you don't use every bit of the .NET library in all of your applications.
Right. Okay.
So you just define the parts that you are using.
Okay. So we have tree shaking as well. So anything that we don't use just gets discarded and doesn't get included when you build a package out.
What I'm hearing from Layla is using everything. That way tree shaking can just take care of it. No? Not how we roll.
Actually, tree shaking may be able to still weed that out if you're not using the methods directly, but it would get a bit annoying to have like a giant using statement at the top of your project.
It would.
There's a whole C# 10 tangent we could go on, but
3 hours later.
Wait. C# 10 is that the? Okay, .NET's on 5 and C# on 10.
On 9, and we're getting 6.
9.
Next.
Okay. I'm with you. And expressions are instructions not results. I'm with you.
Yep. Yeah. So I just typed this in really quick while we were chatting. If I were to do the same thing and say console write line 1 + 1, it actually outputs 2. And if I get the type of 1 + 1, it is an int 32. Whereas the expression is 1 + 1. And
I get so excited with
type.
int 32s. They're just such a fun type. Ooh.
The type is a simple binary expression. A simple binary expression.
Oh my God,
A
Layla, you're
complex
just so brilliant. You have never been smarter than this moment.
I love it. Global startup star. We need it needs to be wrapped in a factory method. So it needs to be global using all the things method call.
Yeah.
All the things. All right. So we kind of got this, and here's a little visualization to help those who need it. Me, I need visualizations, or I cannot cope with these things. So you can kind of, I don't know if you remember, like grade school, we did kind of these little expression trees. Did you guys do those? Where you do like the little, 2 equals, you break it down, you got a 1 on this side and 1 on that side, and the 1 + 1 is 2. Did you guys do those? I did. Maybe on my chiseled tablet, like
I didn't go to a fancy school.
Like
I don't know what fancy math you learned, but that was not the math I learned.
It's funny because
I was
we
either
did these.
in rural Spain or rural Ireland during like those years, so we probably were out like playing with stones and dirt and
Potatoes.
potatoes for sure.
So this is something that Alyssa keeps asking about, and I keep saying there's a gray area here. We can compile expressions and then run them.
All right, hang on. You said a lot of words really quickly.
We can compile expressions and run them. So
I feel like you can compile anything and then run them, so I'm not impressed. Can you explain how this is impressive?
Because we're doing it at runtime. We're not doing it in an editor, and we could programmatically create this code and run it at runtime. We could have a program that creates a program and runs the program.
Okay, if it's during runtime, it's not compiling. I'm just putting it out there. What are you talking
It compiles. It compiles during runtime.
Does it just run during runtime? Are you using the word compile here liberally?
Are you just repeating things again and again and again until we just like go, yes, we have no idea?
I could have an expression of this function +1. At runtime, I can call +1 to string, and it will give me the literal definition of it, which is n lambda n +1. Or I could call +1.compile and get the result of that function is if it were a function I could run, because it is now, because I compiled it. So I could dynamically create a function from some set of inputs and have it create a function that I could compile on the fly and run in my code.
All right. Give me a use case. When am I doing this?
A use case. When would you want to compile dynamic code? I'm trying to think if there's something that uses this in .NET. You could probably do some like machine learning type of things with this, I would imagine. You could create, machine learning looks for a function to best solve a given problem. Nick says DI containers do this. Yeah. So this is a
Snap
.NET
UK
superpower.
says never.
So never. Close to never. It's close to never.
Why did you run across it? Like what were you doing with your
just studying the topic?
Oh,
To
okay.
be honest, like
okay.
there are other reasons we will use this. So
Okay.
the dynamic compilation stuff is just a benefit of these expression trees, one of several. So yeah, we can create code and compile it. Maybe if you're doing like a scripting tool inside of your application, maybe you know like a Unity type thing, or you want people to do some sort of scripting in your app. You could give them the ability to create code inside of your app. So if you want to do this in JavaScript, Alyssa, did you know you could do that as well?
Which
The
part?
eval function in JavaScript will compile a string into runnable code. So that's a fun one too. I've used that before to create like a little mini like CodePen type app. So you can have a user typing in code, and then you can.
Because who
take that
doesn't
code,
want to
compile
build
it.
their own code pen?
Oh, it only took
wrong
like 3
with
lines
you?
of code. It's really not that hard. Like, not like throwing shade on CodePen. Like they have like a bazillion features that are amazing, and there's like probably a trillion lines of code there. But if you want to create like a little like fun project, you can actually do it in like a couple statements. And that's it. It's really not that complex.
Okay.
And I think we have eval in Python. I've definitely typed eval into my Jupyter notebook thing, and it's done something. So maybe I've been doing this in Python too. Who knows?
How come you're doing so much Python without the love of Python?
Oh, I have to do it for school.
And okay, I see. Maybe it'll win you over.
So Nick's answering some things in chat too. So Nick, does some things I think do get compiled in any framework as the trees get analyzed. Yeah, I think there's some compilation under the hood there, but usually you don't run into it yourself. So we talked about runtime compilation, because remember there were a couple of different topics in this thingy here. So there's analyze, rewrite, translate. So analyze, we've done a tiny little bit of analysis, not really programmatic analysis, but we've gone like console.writeline, and we've seen that we can express these things as strings. We've compiled it, which translate. I don't have compilation in there. I have rewrite and translate, but not compile. So that's interesting. I probably need to add a bullet point there. We can do runtime modification as well. So an expression visitor is something that we use to analyze these expression trees. So we can traverse the expression tree, and we can just analyze it, or we can rewrite the expression tree. So we can go through the expression tree, look at all the bits, and write a new one.
Yes. I have a really, really stupid question. Okay, really stupid. Is the actual tree the lambda bit? I'm like, which bit is the actual tree?
It is everything after the assignment. So the lambda and everything inside of it.
Okay, so like the n lambda or fat arrow, curvy arrow, plus size arrow, n+1.
Wait, what?
That's the tree.
Which part?
Sorry, it's like a key bit, and I'm like, I've forgotten already.
I just assumed it was like more of a hypothetical in our minds, so I'm really.
So actually, if we go back to the example in the browser, if I do an expression, I love you guys. That's why I invited you to the show. If I do expression of a function that takes an integer and returns an integer, and I call that +1, the name really doesn't even matter at this point. The question was, is this the expression? And if you look down at the bottom.
Is that the tree?
Tree.
Yeah, that's the expression tree. So you can't really see the tree part from this right line here, but it's actually a very complex tree. So you're going to have a
of like how the data spreads out and is doing what it's doing. Like that's the tree part.
Yes, you're going to have the top level is going to be like n. There is a lambda which has an expression of a variable n, and then it's going to branch out, and then there's going to be there is a binary expression here of n+1. I can't even think through it and write it out. That's what we have the expression visitor for. So the expression visitor will do this for us. So we can throw the lambda expression at it, and it will pick all the parts out and tell us what's there. So this now. This is a fun one. So this is I always joke when I give this presentation that you're in for some excitement when somebody brings up the official Microsoft documentation during a presentation. So this is going to get real exciting and fun.
That's literally every day on JavaScript Girl in a .NET world. So we live here. This is where we live.
So, and we will give them a representation of this. I will have some visuals on how this all looks. But first, let's look at the code for an expression tree visitor, because as the slide says, this is an abstract class. So in order to use an expression tree or expression visitor, we have to implement our own. It's abstract, so we have to inherit from it and override methods on it. So we cannot just new up an expression visitor. We have to create a custom class based on one. And then most of the time we're going to use the visit expression method. And what that does, it recursively walks through the expression and returns an expression. So it's going to visit a node on the tree and then return either the literal node that it found, or this is where the customization part comes in. We can modify what it's going to return back and create a new tree based on that. So if we look at the docs, I know this is just getting further down the rabbit hole, isn't it? Probably making more questions than I'm answering.
Later for you now.
3 hours later.
So back to implementing your own expression tree visitor. This is the example given. The expression visitor. This is VB. Why am I in VB?
Okay, that's while we're on this subject.
Why is it VB?
Since you've broached it, I'm just gonna ask, what is VB and why are there talks about it in the docs when it's like, do you mean C# or VB? And I'm like, what?
So Visual Basic VB is another language that some people use to write .NET apps, and that's the end.
All right.
I've never
VB
done it.
is C# with extra steps.
It is C#. Interesting.
No, it's not. It's not C#.
Oh, man, what? The roller coaster ride.
VB is like JavaScript. A lot of people use it, but nobody should. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh my God. That is so going to be clipped. Oh my goodness. That's going to make you infamous on the Twitterverse. You know that? You know that?
My first desktop app
offended VB users and JavaScript users in one beautiful meme. It was amazing.
Yeah. So it's another language. That's all. Another .NET language is all you need to know.
I mean, I'll accept it, but I'm going to give it a dabble. I'm just going to say, people.
Please don't, Alyssa.
So this this is the source code for the expression tree. Like in their example, they're like, here's an example. We'll just show you our source code for the expression tree, expression visitor. Sorry. So it's a public abstract class, which means we have to inherit from it to use it. It has no constructor. And then it has a method called visit.
Well, it has a constructor. It's a default one.
Yeah, it's an empty one.
Yeah.
We'll call visit, and then we're going to pass in an expression. And then there is the largest switch statement you'll ever see in your life.
Ew.
So the reason this is such a large switch statement is it is going over pretty much every possible code type of what do you call this, abstract syntax tree that you can create in your code. So there is something like negate, which would be like your bang symbol, add, subtract, multiply, divide, or, and everything that you use in code is literally in here. And then on certain things, it will branch off to other visitors. So if it is a binary expression, it will visit a binary expression visitor. Conditional, parameter, there's all sorts of recursive functions that it starts running. Here's one that you've seen a few times. Expression, if the expression type is a lambda expression, then it will visit a lambda visitor, and it will take that lambda expression and visit it, which will then call a visit method.
I think if you could use visit just like one more time in the sentence,
it's
please.
a recursive function, so it will visit and visit and visit again. So there's some other things in here that we generally don't use, but you could see, like, if it visit binary, it's going to visit the left side of that binary and the right side of that binary.
Does visit just mean like apply a class or something?
It means it's going to go down the tree and literally touch those properties and inspect them for you. So in the case of a visit binary, if we look at a binary expression, if I'm the expression visitor, I'm going to visit the left-hand side, the constant on the left-hand side. And then when I'm done visiting that, I'm going to go over and visit the right-hand side and tell you what the property is there. And if that is a binary expression, I will visit those binaries and so on. So hence the recursive part.
And they say that lambdas are efficient.
That was funny.
So yeah, we have to take this class that you see here and implement our own version of it. So what we do is we will inherit from it, and then maybe on the visit binary, if we want to do something with a binary expression, we can do some customization in here while it's visiting the left and right hand sides. Well, we actually have a demo of this, and this is probably one of the most eye-opening demos, I think, in all of this. So this should be good stuff. It'll start to come together, I hope, here. If not, we'll answer questions, because this one is usually the one that does it for me. So if I wanted to create an expression visitor, I have to, again, inherit from it. So I'm going to create a console visitor, and I'm going to inherit from expression visitor. So now I have my own custom visitor called console visitor. And what the console visitor is going to do is when it hits that binary expression and it visits a binary, it will console write a curly brace, or not a curly, parenthesis. Then it's going to visit that left-hand node, and then it is going to visit or inspect the node type. What's binding that binary together? Is if it's an add, then I'm going to write the add symbol. If it's divide, I'm going to write the divide symbol, and then I'm going to visit the right node, and then when I'm done, I'm going to close that with another parenthesis. So what I get when I run...
What happens if there's a minus?
Nothing.
Okay.
It will do nothing.
Okay.
Literally, it will do nothing.
How dare you?
So if you would like to fork this and continue writing it, you're
it's fine.
welcome to add the minus feature. Send a PR. No. That's the open source response to everything.
Okay, so expressions. Wait. Visitors are code ghosts that float about to different bits.
Code ghosts.
And tell you about those bits. Yes, that was how code. Who was it? The code was Sean.
Code with Sean.
And I think that makes the most sense if we think about them as ghosts. Is that correct, Ed?
Sure. So I'm gonna take my +1 method that we've been using this whole time, the expression of the +1 method, which is an n +1. I'm gonna create a new console visitor, and then I'm going to show just the toString. If we were to call toString on the body of the +1 method, and then I'm going to call the visitor, and I'm going to tell it to visit the body of the +1 method. So the body means I'm going to ignore the lambda portion of it, and I'm going.
So did you make that up, or is that built in?
No,
How
this
much
is
of
something
this is made up?
This is custom. This is all custom now.
You're saying dot body is not a built-in.
Oh, dot body is
property.
It is a property of the expression itself. That part's built in. The visitor is totally custom.
I'm with you.
So
I'm with you.
when I say body, the body is this part here.
Yes, the trunk of the tree. We gotcha.
Yep.
Layla has a question.
No, I just missaw something because I thought visitor had a capital V, and I was like, wait, what? Huh? And it doesn't. It's fine.
The instance is lowercase.
Yeah,
That would
I was
totally run
confused.
everything.
Yeah, I was really like.
So if I call toString, just the normal response is to give me back this n+1 portion of that expression. So represented as a string, that's what it looks like. And then the console visitor gives me the same output. So I haven't really accomplished anything, it looks like, right? That like, ooh, wow, you just did the same thing writing to the console does. Not a great example so far, but this is the cool part. If I were to come back in here and on console.writeLine where I have a plus sign, I do add one. I run that. Now I'm translating code. So I've translated n+1 to n add 1. And if you think about how Entity Framework works, isn't that what it's doing kind of under the hood? This is a very minimal simplification of what it's actually doing, but under the covers, this is kind of the idea of what it's doing. It's taking this here and I'm running it through the expression visitor, and now I can customize the output of what that expression is. I've translated this into something completely different. Now it's n add.
Like it makes a SQL query out of it.
Exactly. So I could
okay.
select for something in here. So
I've got it now. I understand.
So now I'm translating code, right? So I could make this into another language if I wanted to. I could take this and translate it into something else. So let's say let here, the let n, you know what I mean? I could turn this into JavaScript or something, Alyssa.
Yeah, I don't get it. I'm confused.
Have you seen SQL?
Yeah, no, I just don't get the magic of this. You're just subbing out. You're saying, hey, if there's this symbol, put in this. We could redo all of this with if statements. What's the magic here? If this, then rewrite it to that. Right? Where's the magic?
Without the ability to analyze it, I can't just run if statements over it. So it has to be, if this is executable code, I can't, for one, analyze it at all. So I have to use an expression to first analyze it. So then there's no way to really navigate something this complex without, because at the end of the day, under the expression visitor, it is just a bunch of if statements. You're right. But the expression visitor is the abstraction of all those if statements. So I don't have to go in and write that piece of code that we saw here. Because literally, this is what you just said. It's a bunch of if statements. This case is literally just a bunch of if statements. So what it's doing is it's saying, we're we're going to give it the expression, and actually, I think I'm using the binary visit because I know it's a binary. No, it does come in the main visit method. So our expression of n+1 comes in here, and it goes through. Is it this? Nope. It gets all the way down to is it a? It's an add. Sorry.
You're right there. Yeah.
So it's an add, and then that fails down to visit binary. Or not fails, but it falls down to it breaks down to visit binary, and then it passes that binary in here, and then it goes to visit binary. And then it walks through the left and right hand sides, creating the output. So this is a bunch of if statements, but they're already written for us. So we don't have to write them again. So that's what the expression visitor is. So because we have the ability to create data about the method, we can then pass it into this set of if statements and then rewrite that code however we see fit. And this is what it's doing with SQL. So in the case of SQL, it'd be select, because we have to yell when we write SQL. There's not really, I mean, I guess you can add in SQL. I mean, it's kind of a ad hoc example, but you get the idea from
Schmab was saying
something.
That the magic is how the expression tree is created with the expression in the first place. He's saying that's the true magic.
But now, now you know what is inside the black box, right? So this is what's in Entity Framework that's making these decisions. When we write something like the original example of this, so it's going to look at it. It gets everything, not just the body. It gets the whole thing. It's like, okay, you ran the where method, and then we're passing in this parameter, and you want title, and then it converts all of this into select title from some table where title equals developer, and it creates that SQL query by doing that. It's running through that analyzer, the expression visitor, and visiting it, and then outputting a string of SQL query. So now you know how the black box works in Entity Framework. Pretty cool stuff, I think. Anyway, I'm a nerd though. Like, yeah. So a little bit of visual on what a lambda looks like. Maybe this will help too. So this is the expression tree broken down into the parts. So you have a parameter expression, a lambda expression, the body that contains the binary expression, and that has an add expression with a parameter expression and a constant expression. Did I say expression enough?
All I heard was expression, and I need to just sit and look at this diagram for a moment. Wait, just let me digest it, because all I heard was expression.
So this is what your code looks like.
Right, the body is the
visualize it.
The expression-y bit, and we got the parameter. Okay.
Let's try. Nope. There we go. So the function is n lambda. I need to figure out how to change the color on this. I messed up the color one day. Now I can't get any Zoom It experts out there.
Oh God, no! I don't open that at all, because then I lose control of my computer, and that's it.
Zoom It change color. And I don't know the hotkeys. That sucks. One day I hit it and it changed from like red to yellow, and I can't get it back now.
Oh, so you're forever on yellow. Yeah.
Yeah, I am forever stuck on yellow. So let's see.
I think, Fuel, you need to understand them to succeed as a human.
It doesn't tell me the hotkeys. There's no docs here. No docs. All right. So the code is n lambda n+1.
Smab said type the letter of the color in draw.
The letter of the color?
type R.
Oh wow! Look at Smab. Like he's got it right there. Look at that. So it's N lambda N. That's what's represented here.
Oh yeah, I got that bit, but I was just like,
So the post part is probably confusing because it's not what I just typed.
Huh? What?
It's hang on, I typed it wrong. It
What?
is
post lambda.
it's post lambda n plus one, which isn't valid, I don't think. I might have to update the slide.
Happening? What is post? Are you making up things again?
Yes.
No. There's
to
another example
confuse us.
coming. There's another example coming, is what it is. Now I can't get out of Zoom it. There we go.
Ah!
No, I can't. Stop it. Stop. We'll go. There it goes. Finally.
I want to see that one with all the parentheses.
Okay.
Like you keep flashing that up, and I'm like, "Is that it?"
So how is this useful? Like we saw that Entity Framework uses it, right? But we're not using it ourselves, right? We're not doing anything ourselves. That's all just stuff that's already written for us. You could one could do this. So if you look back at the example in here, there is a walkthrough of creating an iQueryable link provider. So if you'd like to create your own provider for Entity Framework, so if SQL's not enough and you have something you would like to write a provider for and do that code translation, you're more than welcome to come here, and in a 39-minute read, you will be an expert on creating your own link provider.
Yeah,
And
but
you
they're not
can,
supporting
you
it
know,
anymore. Look, it says
this
2012
is-
we did this. I mean, it's nearly 10 years old.
well, expressions are 10 years old, but they still work. So, and they've created a link to Terra server provider sample for you in case you want to start there. You know, there's that. So, yeah, this is stuff that I will never touch.
So-
It's way too advanced here.
By
But,
this, does it mean when you're using iQueryable, if you want to write, so for iQueryable, when you want to execute it, you'll do like toList or something on it. Is that what it's talking about? Like write your own custom thingy mabob on the end, or what?
Ooh.
No, so this is saying like you have like if you have the Entity Framework provider, the SQL provider for Entity Framework, your where statement or whatever you put in is going to emit SQL code. If you have another database that's not supported by Entity Framework and you'd like to add that support, so if you had Alyssa DB and you wanted to create
That's a frightening
syntax for the Alyssa database, you could create your own provider to do that.
People would be so angry at my API. This doesn't make any sense. It's not supposed to make sense.
So I'm gonna show you another way we can use this, and that's to write better queries. And there's a lot of tricks that people don't know about writing queries. And I think there was something on your show. I was like, if you did it this way, you could write it that way, and it might be easier to read. And you're like, can you do that? And I don't remember the exact conversation because it was like 3 months ago. But that's what was like the catalyst to get us here. Like I was like, I think you would enjoy this, Layla, if you saw these tricks that you can use to kind of create these filters and stuff inside of your Entity Framework code. So we can.
What was I
we can
doing?
use. I don't remember. You're writing some EF on something. And yeah, you're connecting to some database to do some demo or work on one of your apps. Yeah.
I can't remember. I've
don't
been
remember
doing
either.
Cosmos. Was I doing something with Cosmos?
I think
and
it,
getting
yeah,
really
you're right. It was
angry?
Cosmos. It was Cosmos.
Yeah.
You're right.
And I
So
was like,
there's an
"Ah!"
entity. There's an Entity Framework provider for Cosmos, which I use in one of my demo apps. And these things apply there as well, even though it's not technically SQL, they have a provider for it. So it has a So Entity Framework does work with it.
Yeah, because I was cross because I couldn't use link with Cosmos DB, and I was getting very cross. I think that's what it was.
What's EF Core?
Entity Framework.
But just the one that works not with framework, but the modern Entity Framework. So
the newer version of it.
The newer version.
What? There's two things. There's two what?
Oh.
So you can think of it this way, Alyssa. There's .NET Framework, which you could think of as Angular, and then there's .NET Core, which you could think of as Angular.
You're thinking the framework was AngularJS.
Angular and AngularJS. Like there's the old and the new, but they're essentially the same thing.
I thought,
but they don't work together.
I thought we were talking about Entity. Now you're talking about .NET. What? What?
Hang on a second.
3 hours later.
And we're back. So if we're going to use Entity Framework, let's not worry about which version it is because this works on both.
Okay,
works on EF Core and on because expressions have not changed. So this works in either scenario.
Nor will they ever. You heard it here first.
Some of these things work in non-Entity Framework, just in link scenarios too. So we can talk about that too. But I like this pipes and filter pattern. So the idea is you break your filters up into reusable chunks. And then the idea is you're going to go from a source, which in most cases is your database, and you're going to run some filters or rules on those things. And then you will get a result. Pretty simple stuff. So it's, in the simplest form, you get your database, DB context, you call a couple where statements on it, and then you get your result that you're looking for. So let's play around with this a little bit. The reason,
look at those nubs.
Circles. The reason you might do this is for readability.
Sorry,
so
so what? That's supposed to be that is supposed to be readable.
You're breaking down
it brings joy to people.
The complex things into something more simple. I've run into things like this. This is just a sample. Oops, I didn't mean to highlight.
Future is now.
No. I was trying to just scroll, and not that highlighting one of the chats isn't important, but I didn't mean to do that. So I've run into queries that look like similar to this. So not verbatim, but like, what is going on here? Like somebody typed this in, knew what they were doing, but I'm, new to the project, and I look at this query and I'm like, there's a lot of comparisons going on. There's a lot of ands and ors in here, and I can't quite tell exactly what's happening. And it's going to take a while to figure out what the developer that wrote this was trying to do. All I have here is a where, so I know there's a filter, and it's a pretty complex one, but I don't know what they're filtering for. I can make some assumptions based on properties I see, but that's about it. So there's something with it being published or not. There's some dates being thrown around. There's an author that's featured here and some dates there as well. But I don't know exactly how this works.
I thought you were going to answer Silicon's question, and then you just
ignored
it.
What was what's the question there?
You put it on screen for like 15 minutes.
So,
we're all wondering.
Oh, did I? I was trying to clear the thing. So, are they going to keep calling it Entity Framework Core or just call it EF? I think they'll probably invent a new name, to be honest. I hate to say that. You think I'm joking? I'm not. So,
not joking.
Can anyone in chat tell me what the proper name for the proper name for ASP.NET is on the latest version? I'll word it that way. What is the proper name for ASP.NET right now on the release coming up?
ASP.NET. The proper name for ASP.NET on the current version.
Mm-hmm.
Go. I'm asking Turtle, who is a JavaScripter as well, and I'm getting a blank owl look. So he said he hasn't had coffee yet. Anybody?
Closer. We're getting closer.
Is it called .NET Core? Is that it?
Nobody has said it yet.
Core ASP.NET 6?
It is ASP.NET Core in .NET 6.
ASP.NET Core in .NET 6 is the proper verbiage.
Yep. Here, I will type it if you'd like me to. It is
who hurt the naming? Who hurt the naming team? Who hurt them?
.NET Core in .NET 6.
Oh, for Pete's sake!
Thank you.
So the answer to your question, Silicon Orchid. Sorry, go ahead, Layla.
This is it. They're going to keep the core because I can't remember who it was. I was quizzing about the core. I was like, for Pete's sake, why have we got core everywhere? And I think it was David Fowler. He responded saying, we keep it to stop it being confusing.
Okay.
So that is what I think entity framework
when you
would be.
Hear the word core on things, does that just mean the latest?
Yeah,
It means the cross-platform type one.
Right.
What? Like instead of Blazor hybrid, you would say Blazor core to mean does all the things?
No.
Oh,
no.
There's no such thing as Blazor core.
Yet?
Oh yeah, don't say these things.
3 hours later.
Fine. We'll focus up.
We could go on. We could have a 2-hour show just on how messed up naming is in .NET. Okay.
I don't think that's a bad idea. Some people are still confused at what VB is, and you both have promised on air to teach me. So, I mean,
I never promised you I'd teach you about VB. I said I'll come on.
You all
think we're doing this next week.
Hearts were crossed, pinkies were promised. Continue, Edward.
This is why I planned 2 hours for an hour show, folks.
I don't know what you're talking about, Ed. I mean, we're super laser on point.
One might walk into a project that looks like this. It's so we're gonna refactor, but we're not gonna start with this monster here. We're gonna start with something simpler. So this one says where it's getting blog posts. This is just for simplification. It's blog posts where the blog post is published and the posted on date is less than or equal to today. So does that make sense? Roughly, like, is it published? Yes, it's published, and the date is less than or equal to today because we don't want to publish something that's scheduled to go in the future and display it. Cool. We're all on board with that.
Can you repeat the last sentence and a half? Sorry, just real quick. Seriously, just like
3 hours later.
I'm gonna abuse that. I got a spit take there. That's good.
Sometimes you talk too fast. It's just.
No, that's fine. I do talk too fast. No, you're correct. That's good critique. I do sometimes talk too fast. So
you could get all the words in whilst we're like, going off everywhere else.
And if you think this is bad, Alyssa, try inviting me to one of your JavaScript folks like 30-minute presentations.
Yeah,
so I'm gonna do the same content in 30 minutes. I don't care.
So when I first became a DevRel, Ed was obviously on my DevRel team, and we were talking and we were organizing a conference together. And I come from a world where I'm not even kidding. When I invite speakers, I had a very high profile speaker tell me, I can't do an hour talk. A 20-minute talk is the most I've ever done. I'm not even kidding. Like, this person works for a big name company and is like popular in the community and very brilliant. And they were like, who would do an hour talk? And I was like, I feel you, man. I know
75 minutes.
These .NETers are crazy. Okay. Because Layla was like, oh my gosh, you're giving me a 50-minute talk. How refreshingly short. And I was like,
when I do this talk, it's literally an hour talk that I do. And it has demos and everything. So like we are at like the 30-minute mark normally. So when I start this, I warn people that this is drinking from the fire hose, and like, you know, you may not get all of it the first time around. It's not a simple topic. So like, I tend to talk fast. Yes. Like you're correct. I will slow down. That is a me problem, not a you problem. So this is a query, and it is filtering data on blog posts. So the first half of it, so actually two things here. And this is the exact reason why we're doing this, by the way, is because it's difficult to understand these things.
I mean, I'm with you up until the backwards fat arrow. And then I just like my brain kind of goes sideways. What is happening with your backwards fat arrow?
This is why I like, what do they call it? Ligatures, because they avoid some of this. Like, that is not a backwards lambda. That is a less than or equal to. This is not a greater than or equal to. It is a lambda because the equal precedes the sign. If this was a comparison, it'd be caret equals. So it'd be greater than or equal to. So there's that bit. And then the first part of this says, take the post, and we're going to say, is it published? Okay, so this is a truthy statement. Is it published? Yes or no? The second part, so this is and. So we're going to and this together. It also has to be have a posted on date that is less than today. Whatever today is gets passed in. So if we just ran it, is it published? So we might publish it, but we might not want it to go live until some date in the future. So if we set that posted on date to like next week, and we don't have this comparison here, then we're going to start showing blog posts that aren't meant to be shown.
That was the bit that got me, not what I was reading. It was like, why would you have like published dates in the future? What monster is doing this to us? And I got that bit, but I was like, but why would that ever not be true?
Because some evil architect decided this is the way it's going to work.
Okay.
Oftentimes we're handed code that we don't have control over. We just have to query the stuff. Other times people just write really bad sample bits for presentations.
I'll be quiet.
We are on a little bit of the latter side of that equation. So
stop it when I'm having a drink.
I needed things to query. I don't know. It's like, what should I put for an example? Here's what I came up with. Shoot me. So these are our two statements.
Extreme.
We have this truthy thing, and then we have a date that we need to compare. That's the main takeaway. There's two items. They're anded together, so we need both of these to qualify for it to pass the filter.
If you're less than today, are you before today? Is that what less than today means?
Yes.
Okay, I'm with you.
Less than or equal to. So it's either today or it was yesterday. It's not tomorrow.
Gotcha.
Thou shalt count. The holy hand grenade bit comes to mind there. Not to two. I don't know it off the top of my head. Don't be mad if I don't know the Monty Python like script from front to back, but you know where I'm going with that one if you've ever seen the movie.
I keep hearing about this, and I'm going to. I keep hearing that Richard Campbell has a sick history of .NET talk that I need to.
Yeah, he has a book too. There's a book.
I think there's the book coming out in time for November, because it's like the 20-year anniversary of.
Yeah, I think that was
.NET.
his goal, was to release with the anniversary.
Yeah, Nick, we're getting lost in the details rather than the big picture.
Yeah, so we need to clarify something really quick before we move further. So there are two extension methods for the where statement. So whenever you write where, you've probably done this without even thinking twice about it, but these are two very different where statements, even though they are just simply called where. If I have an enumerable, a list, an array, any of those things, then when I write where, the actual function delegate that you pass in, the parameter you pass in, Remember, this is that homoiconicity thing again. This is not an expression. This is a runnable method. This is an executable delegate. If it is iQueryable, it is an expression. Even though they look identical, these are not the same thing. Right? How many times have you thought of this when you're writing your code? How many?
I've not thought of that. I know that the IEnumerable where clause or anything that you do on IEnumerable will execute your code,
Mhm.
and then the iQueryable won't until you tell it to do something. But I've never really thought about that expression being executable and the other one being a function delegate.
Right.
Never crossed my mind. I knew how it worked, but I was just like, yeah, I know what to do when, and that's it.
So there's delayed execution involved here too. So we'll get into some of that as we go. But
Chat is
just to-
convinced that you're missing an arrow. Where would the arrow go?
Are they?
I am
One of these.
at the end of the second expression.
Oh,
There
yes.
should be another one there. Good eye, chat room.
Okay.
Which is on my right hand shoulder, so I keep looking over there.
Oh my God!
Link in
syntax.
general has deferred execution, so they happen a little bit differently in these two scenarios as well. So we can build a IEnumerable query, and as soon as we call toList, it will execute all of those methods. When we do iQueryable, we build our statements. They will build the expression, the final expression tree. When we call, it will build the expression tree, but it will actually execute the SQL code in any framework when we call the toList method. So they both have deferred execution, but what they're executing is different. So one's just executing code, the other's executing a SQL query in most cases. So the same, but completely different. So that needs to be understood, but what we need to get that to we need to understand that to get where we're going. So if we look at kind of the breakdown of a link query, there are a couple more things that we can kind of understand from it that will help us rewrite our link queries. So a lot of times you can see these and statements to chain things together. We say just the double ampersand, right? So it's where some value is, there's something truthy here, there's something truthy here, and then we're anding those two things together. So we're saying where A and B give me results, right? A lot of people don't know you can just write two where statements and it does the same exact thing.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
Are we looking at an iQueryable or an IEnumerable, or does it not matter?
It doesn't matter until we get to here.
Okay.
So in the sense of an IEnumerable, it would produce results. In an iQueryable, it's going to produce the SQL query. The results from an IEnumerable would be the same. The query is still the same. So it's yes in both cases, but the results are, while they're also the same, one actually queries data and the other one sends a SQL statement up.
Why is that one configurable? Or have we not got to that bit yet?
We haven't quite got there yet.
Okay, sorry.
Haven't quite got there yet, but these are identical statements. This and this are identical statements. They produce the same result and the same SQL query. Okay. The reason for this is because of those expression trees. So the expression generated from this is the same as that. And then because the expression tree is identical, the SQL statement is also identical. anytime we give Entity Framework an expression tree, the same expression tree, it will generate the same SQL statement. So you can chain wheres together, and whenever it sees chained wheres, it's just simply saying and. Cool. So depending on who you are, you might think one of these is more readable than the other. I like the second myself.
I don't think anyone would argue with that statement.
I will explain more on the configurable part in a minute, because simply put, the configurable part is I can have a branch here. I could put an if statement in between these, and because of the deferred execution, I could build this where dynamically. I cannot do that here. It's hard-coded. But we'll get to that.
Someone asked, Phil was asking that is Link to SQL dead now? And Entity Framework is what you use. And then someone else called Nick was saying that maybe Link to SQL is part of it.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the details on that. I just know there's different providers now. There's there's SQL Server, there's MySQL, and then there's Cosmos DB. Those are the main ones, I think. There may be some others too, but those are the mainstream ones. So let's see what Silicon Orchid asking is here. So where do we have the dot and this dot that?
Does this mean that each expression brings back an instance of itself in order to chain those methods?
So the dot where and then another dot where.
I think they are separate instances. So like people usually go down the rabbit hole of, well, this one's more performant than that one. It's so nuanced that you're not going to see it.
I think you're right, Silicon. I think it has to be bringing back an instance of itself because it's calling where on itself, right? Like,
yeah, I think they're two different instances, and then they get
moosed?
They get combined together. So here is an example. If I give you a query and I say where, this is kind of the SQL output that comes from it. And then if I chain another one together, all it does is it creates this add right here. So if you look, and then we can do this forever.
What?
So this is the expression being created.
Yep.
If I add a where, you see it just adds another bubble and then another bubble. And that's how the expression tree actually gets created. So this is...
It is like each of these are on like line 1, 2, and 3. They're all... it's all on the same query. Like it's not like modifying it and then giving it to 2 and then modifying it and then giving it to 3. Right there. It's all the base parent query bit.
It will eventually end up the way it's displayed here.
What?
This expression will get built, and then the query from it will look like this.
I have a question about rows 1, 2, and 3. You've got the first line, var query equals query.where, blah, blah, blah. Then you've just got some like extra lines. They're not chained. Is that on purpose? Because now we haven't got our query returned.
Oh, yeah. You can do this. You can assign this either way. This is optional. You could take that off if you wanted to. You could chain them. There's several ways to write this. You could chain them like that, or you can just have query over and over again. If you wanted to put a branch in here and put an if statement, like if name filter is true, then add this query also. You could do it this way too.
I've done that before. Like when you're doing like filtering into it, or you want optional parameters to come in, or adding like it show deleted records is a good one, isn't it? Or finished orders or whatever. You could have that as a query, as an if else statement or a ternary or something. So I've seen.
Yeah.
I think I've done ternaries in that as well.
you could have a flag in here that turns on and off that is deleted portion there. So that was purposeful to show it like this.
Okay.
And then I think chat is asking, I think there would be duplicate lambdas in all of these at some point, but they get reduced by EF before it hits the SQL statement. That's why I wrote it this way. So the final result of that statement will eventually look like this and will produce this query. And I've actually unit tested this, so I know this for a fact. So I'll try to skip over this because we're getting short on time. But you can create custom filters. Oh no, don't be sorry. These are great questions. If you know what extension methods are, this is basically a breakdown of an extension method. So we're for Alyssa's sake, we're adding to the prototype of a type. So we're creating a method on a whatever we see an iQueryable of post, we can create a method that will show up, and we can name that method. So I could take that is published statement and encapsulate it inside of an extension method. So I could say post where post is published, and I could call that are published. And we can actually give some meaningful names to these pieces of filter, and then we can actually make them reusable too. So if we look at the before and after on this, after I create my extension methods, I could have a post repository where post blah, blah, that's the original. Or I could have a query that says post repository, get the posts where they are published, posted on or before today.
That's so much nicer.
And this is just not even anything to do with expression trees directly, just indirectly knowing these rules that are happening inside that black box. I can safely rewrite these. So we haven't actually touched the expression tree itself yet. And look what we've done. We've cleaned that up. So this is just simple encapsulation of some methods that's letting us name things and give them some meaningful. I like when I write code professionally, that it should be self-documenting as much as possible. And if I read the one on the right, it's human readable.
Yeah.
The one on the left takes a little bit of thinking.
I heard that described as a veneer in the Python book.
I like
that. So it's a nice bit of veneering on the stuff inside.
So I actually have this in some examples here as well.
Make it bigger.
Look.
Okay.
How do you make all of those things appear on your screen? Is there a button?
What things?
Oh,
that. Yes.
You've lost me.
All of your apps, like the Alt tab, it's like the Windows. The thing you just did to change, like.
Oh.
I'm just making words.
How do you do that?
Alt tab.
Alt tab. Thank you.
You had a different.
There was
one.
another view though. Yeah.
Did I have
it wasn't
a
the
one?
Alt tab.
That
one.
What's that view?
Oh, this is the menu button, the start menu button. Just the Windows key. I have it configured to show like this.
Oh, you've got specialties. I gotcha.
I think I toggled it to like the Windows 8 style because I like that one. So I've got some unit tests here. And this goes through the various steps of this example. And basically, for time's sake, all of these unit tests will continually pass through this entire presentation. So everything that I write, is getting back the same data from the database. It's not using an actual database in this case, but I do have another project that I was able to. It's a long ass story because of changes they made in .NET. But what it used to do is actually compare the emitted SQL to the known SQL code. And back in the day, this used to actually test that as well, but they removed that feature in one of the versions of Entity Framework, so I can't do it anymore. But this is all validated that it can creates the same SQL query, gets the same results. So make a long story short, that's what we're doing with the unit tests, and they will not fail. So this is the first one that we just refactored here. So we broke it down into 2 where statements, and then based on those 2 where statements, we're able to break it down even further. See if this worked. There we go. To say are published and posted on or before today. Those are my
What was
2
that voodoo
filters. Git. I just went to another branch where
Gotcha, I'm with you. It was good. It was good. Okay, I'm with you.
Magic is so now I've got 2 filters, and if we control click, we can actually go directly to those. So not only have I changed the verbiage of how this code reads, but I've also given you the actual methods that are running. So if I'm having a problem with this query running and it's not giving me the results I want, I can go into each individual filter, and you can see this is called post filters. I can go into each filter and kind of break down what each one is doing and modify them, and work on them individually rather than try to decipher this giant string of stuff. So there's some help that's being given here. So this one is are published. This is posted on or before, and then they're just wrapping those where statements, because again, the deferred execution means they don't have to be all in line. We can have them in separate pieces. So that's step 1.
Oh, all of that was step 1.
Now we go to this monster, and we're like, all right, can I refactor this one? Okay. So there's this giant where statement, but there's some familiar bits in here, right? We've already done some of this, haven't we? So if we look at this one again, here's that posted is published thing, and then there's that one again. So those are familiar, right? So what I can do is let's go back to that big blob that we just looked at. This is the actual query in code. Yes, it's that long. This is what we're looking at on the slide. All of that is in there, but we already know this piece. So we have filters for that. So we can replace those filters like that. So I could say are published on or before today, and then we continue with the rest of this gibberish because there's a problem. And that problem is these 2 bars here.
The ors.
So if I chain wheres together, they produce ands, right? So you'd think there'd be a statement to produce an or, right? There isn't. There's no or. There's no or in LINQ. Where clauses will produce ands indefinitely, but once we hit an or, there's nothing we can do.
Not even a custom-y one.
Oh well. Now
are you going to show us a custom-y one?
So this is where we need to know about expression trees really, really well. So what we can do is write our own library to go in and reconfigure some of these expressions and rewrite them. So if we think about a lambda, we have posted on, and then there's some cutoff date. This is the actual example that's there. So we're looking for a date that is greater than or equal to, and then what we have multiple of these post filters that are happening here. So if we look here, it's post lambda. If we were to write them separately, it'd be post lambda author, post lambda some date, and so on. So it looks something like this. So if we were to combine this with an or an and, basically we just want the body of each of these. So
and then we can write the custom expression-y thingy in.
So if we use an expression visitor and we go through these things, and we while we're visiting, we see that lambda expression, we could create a method that combines 2 lambda expressions together with an and statement. And we'd have to take that lambda expression and rip it off, combine the 2 common post parameters, and then reform the body with our and statement. So we could, at runtime, rewrite this code. So
I thought I was following, and now I'm like, no. Okay,
so
carry on.
This is something that we could write ourselves. I wrote this. It took a while. The main reason, again, this is the only failure in this this thing. Again, when we hit this set of bars, this won't compile. We can't and this together this way. So we have to use something else. So now you'll see I've got an or statement. So where did that or statement come from? I'm going to jump in with my code analysis tool here. I have something called predicate extensions. This is the code that I wrote to do this. So it is up on GitHub. It is for like .NET 7 or sorry, .NET 4.7 or something like that. It is older. I haven't released it for .NET Core yet, but the source code is on GitHub. It's literally like it's like one file, I think, something like that. It's very small. GitHub. And I'll show you how this all works. Here's the predicate extensions library that I wrote, and it's fully tested. And there are extension. Oh, actually, this is a really cool trick. If you haven't seen this one, if you want to look at your code in GitHub and not have to like dive through all these files, hit period on the keyboard. That's it, just period. And boom, we're in Visual Studio Code. Did y'all know that?
No, I never heard suchness. I did not know.
I just learned this like a couple weeks ago. I was like, what? Just hit period on your keyboard, and now you're. Yeah. So let's try to. Can I zoom it? There we
Does it have to be your code, or can it be any code?
Any code on GitHub.
Oh.
So, what predicate extensions gives you is basically an and an or method that you can use inside of your where statements. Whoops, I hit the wrong button and jump back out. So if we look at the code for it, like I said, it's literally one file, predicate extensions CS. You could actually just copy and paste this file in your project, and now you've got this in your in your library that you're using. And yes, I did borrow some of the code from Stack Overflow, gave credit there. But what this does is it gives you an API around expressions, and it lets you and or them together. So you'll see there's an and method and an or method in here, and there's that combine lambdas method. This is a custom method I wrote that will go in and analyze two expressions and combine the lambda portion of it with the body of the expression. So it gets the redundant bits off of the expressions you pass in. So there's redundancy here. This post lambda piece is redundant. So if we take that lambda, remove it, and then recombine it, then it creates a single expression. So what this is doing is it's just getting syntactic sugar around the thing that you're writing. And
which is what we all want, because nobody wants to do this over and over again for every project.
Right. So at the top level, if we're able to encapsulate these at the where statement, that's fine. Or it could be a select as well. But generally it's a where statement because it's a filter. So we're going to have a filter if we can. If that thing contains an or in it, then we need to actually create what I call a rule. And then the rule has encapsulation, and then we can and or things together inside of that rule. So now I could say posted on or after, or it has a featured author, and I misspelled it, and it's still in this stupid demo. Author, featured author that's posted, and there's the R. There's the R that belonged over there. Posted on or after, and then we pass in the parameters of the featured author and the cutoff date.
And we need that rule because we need that to be a bool, don't we? Because if it is false, that's the only time it's going to go into the or statement. Is that right?
Yes.
So if it evaluates to true on that, it's not even going to bother going into that or statement.
Actually, no, because it's an expression. It's not the executable code. So it's going to give us an expression that would do what you just said.
Right. Okay.
It's describing what you just said.
Okay.
So now we can throw or statements in our code. And like I show this to people and they're like, oh, well, that's just a lot of extra, syntactic sugar over something that just, some of us experts in our ivory towers can read already anyway. So what does this give us? We're basically replacing these double bars with the word or. Big deal, right? And I'm like, okay, that's fine. That is a point of view. But your boss calls and he says, that featured author thing that we have on our website. Well, now we have multiple featured authors. That it wasn't a thing before, but now it's a requirement. So your filter is going to have to change. Now it's a dynamic query because we don't know how many authors are featured authors. We just have a bunch of them. That's not a problem because we have a way to tackle this and do dynamic SQL queries. So if we look at our statement again, we have the ability to branch on it, and we can just do a for each over the featured authors and create a dynamic or statement in here. And you can't really do that with expressions. Without expressions, it's almost you'd have to write the SQL code at that point. You'd have to ditch an any framework and just go with direct SQL code. So we're going to dynamically query this now. So if we look at the next step here, I can't force checkout, I think.
It's because you updated your author or ortho.
So now instead of or featured author posted on or after, it should be featured authors with an S. Did I not go far enough in the future? There. So featured authors with an S now takes its place. And if we look at it, we're repeating the rule of or featured author posted on or after. So now we're just iterating over a bunch of author names and then producing as many or statements as we need to get our query where we need it. This bit about begin is just a helper for the expression trees, because remember, you can't new up an empty expression tree, and we have to start somewhere to or. We can't just or nothing. So we have to create some sort of starting point to start building this expression tree up. So there is a method in here called begin, and begin just gives you a fictitious starting point to start chaining ors onto. So if we look, I think there should be, yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is the slide here. So if we want to create this dynamic expression, if we want to start chaining onto it, we have to have a starting point. So the starting point is just to create an expression of constant, and it's a bool value. And what happens is the expression visitor that I wrote will go through and clean up the straggler, the meaningless true or false that's sitting at the front of an expression, if it manages to get that far through the chain. If for some reason this were to slip into Entity Framework, it's ignored anyway. So if you were to pass a statement in an Entity Framework that's just literally true, Entity Framework's like, that's meaningless in SQL and it does nothing. So we create this starting point, and then we or onto that starting point. And then at the very end, that is ripped off of the final expression given any framework, and any framework goes, I know what this is. It makes a big fancy query out of it. So
isn't that a way of doing SQL injection by starting something with a truthiness? I seem to remember. When you're like trying to do SQL injection attacks, you start with a truthy statement. I seem to remember, because that kind of gets you in.
That may be why Entity Framework ignores it.
Yeah.
possibly. So if you were to somehow create a statement that just says, if you just passed in an expression of true, it's just like, that's nothing. It just doesn't produce a SQL query at that point. It will take everything after that though. So this is something I had to kind of test and work through when I created this little tool. But at the end of it, you get from that big maddening query, it's like this where statement that just goes on indefinitely, reads like this: get all repositories that are posted on or before today, where they're posted on or after a cutoff date, or the featured authors are posted on or after a cutoff date, as opposed to trying to figure this out.
It's so much cleaner and more readable. It's really, how can you not like that? For all those sort of, as you say, ivory towers. I worked with one guy years ago who would be like, well, I can read this. And it was the most terse, like one-liners you've ever seen. And you come in there and you don't know what the code's going to do. And you're like, that's what you started with. That's just it. You're like, here we go. He's like, well, it's obvious. And you just want to smack him in the face with its obviousness.
What's nice about all these too is each one of these are, this is the counter argument to what you're saying. So when you talk to somebody like that, each piece of this query is now encapsulated somewhere. So if I need to troubleshoot, I'm not troubleshooting a single statement. Yeah. I'm going in and I can control click on any of these. I can say are published. Well, that one is a method called are published, and all it does is calls this where statement. That's really simple. Okay. What about posted on or after? If I look at that one, this one is simply comparing the date. That's all it's doing, is comparing a date. Okay. So what about this featured authors? Well, this one is looping over all of the authors and comparing, or it's comparing whether they are a featured author, and if there's more of them, then they're just OR together. So if I have multiple, it's just a lot of OR statements, but it's really just looking to see if it meets these two criteria, which if I dive into that one now and control click on that one, I can say, well, this is just a filter that says it has this name and this date that matches. And I can even dive into those. And then again, these are just looking at some simple comparison. So they're very abstracted away, and I can just dive through them very easily and figure out what's going on.
Which makes it all adhere to the single responsibility principle more, which makes it infinitely more testable and maintainable and reusable. So it is a much nicer way of going about things.
I think for most people, the thing that is going to help the most isn't even the expression visitor thing that I wrote, but just the simple fact that you can take a where statement and break it down like this.
Yeah.
And then I think, is there a step 9 on this? I rewrote this. I think I forgot the step 9 piece, but what you would see in the next step is you don't even need this whole statement now. You can use an expression bodied member here. Yeah. And what eventually you see is just a bunch of one-liners all the way down. So you can just look at the tail end of all of these and see what they're doing. It makes it super easy to just navigate and figure out what's happening. And then it's self-documenting at the same time. And you can—
Fuel was saying that the drawback with abstraction is that you need to dive to see what like each piece is doing. But I think it's a worthwhile drawback. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
you can just read it. That's the thing.
It gives you the ability to focus on it, because you're not looking at all of this at the same time. You're looking at just a comparison in isolation. Like, okay, I can focus on this piece and figure out why that's not working, rather than some part of this isn't working. Yeah, you could also break these down and test them individually.
Yeah.
So if you needed to, you could you could say is, are published giving me back the results I expect? Is this giving me back the results I expect? Now, is the combination of all these things giving me back the results? With this, you'd have to physically like retype all of these things into isolation and test them.
Yeah. I just see that Kivectel says, does order matter? And it
Does order
shouldn't, because it
matter?
will, because of the deferred execution, it will build the statement regardless of the order. Is that right? When we're talking about wheres.
I'm trying to think. I think that's a yes and no. So if it changes the query, then obviously not. So I think if it could depend on where they exist in the chain. If they change the query, if it's trying to think, I want to say no, but there might be
Some cases.
Yeah. You
So
start dealing with
Kobler-Schwan says
ands
it
and
does
ors.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you start dealing with ands and ors, things can get, parentheses definitely matter. So that's why I try to do this final where statement at the end. This one has the ors in it because ands generally don't matter. It's when you have ands and ors combined, the order starts to matter.
Yeah, and then that makes your head hurt.
It does.
Because it's which bit should it execute? Should it do the ORI bit first? Should it do that bit? That's what Silicon Orchid is saying, like the brackets in equations. Which bits does it, should you execute first? And it does matter. And what has more weighting and higher priority? And so many questions.
So at the end of the day, though, both the statements that I showed, these both produce the same entity framework expression tree, and they both, because it's the same expression tree, produce the same SQL statement. Cool. So yeah, questions are more than welcome. Alyssa, are you okay? Are you all right?
No, I've learned a lot. I mean, not quite at the level that Layla learned, but I am learning.
What level did I learn at, Alyssa? Honestly,
expert level, engage.
So
you ask some questions, and I'm like, "Oh, she's up. Oh, she's up there." Okay.
If you're new to the show, by the way, a little disclaimer. The reason I asked Alyssa that is because she's brand new to .NET. So this is a pretty abstract topic for even like I think intermediate folks with .NET. So I wanted to make sure we weren't losing Alyssa just because of the newness of the language to her. This isn't like personal, like for Alyssa, let me talk slower. No, it's not that. It's not that at all. We just threw Alyssa into the deep end of the pool and asked her to swim is what I was getting at.
Yeah, I've been loving like diving into .NET and tinkering around with things. This definitely was the deep end of the pool, but I think I gathered things on a simpler level. Whereas not maybe what you were trying to teach. Because I'm like, oh, that's what that piece of code is doing.
I'll be honest. I've run into people that have done .NET for a long time, and there's certain things about this that they didn't know, and it's not because they should have known, or it has nothing to do with their skill level. It's the fact that it's so abstracted away from you in the .NET land. Like you're using these things on a daily basis without having to know.
Yeah.
So it's like you tell people, well, you can just chain wheres together and they just create ands, and they're like, huh? Like when was that a thing? Like that's always been a thing? What? It's like, yeah, that's always been a thing. Like you could just and together forever and it just works. It's just the way it operates. And if you think about it logically, that's why there's no or. It's because it doesn't really fit anywhere. It has to be within the statement. But people generally don't know this one. And that one somewhat surprises me. The other one is they most people don't know Let's see where the slide is. Sorry if I'm flicking
I
this one.
knew it, but because I've used it, and I would, if I needed to go and make something configurable, I would have just done it without thinking about it. Does that make sense? I just would have
Yeah.
separated out those things into separate where clauses, without giving it any further thought.
This one usually catches people like they write against IEnumerable. So again, Alyssa, IEnumerable is when you're not using a database. You're just you have a list of stuff, and it's just an array or a list, and you need to filter on it. When you're using this against SQL code, it's iQueryable, and it's going to generate some sort of SQL query at the end. But they're so easy to use interchangeably that people don't realize it until they have to take this statement here and move it outside of the parameter for some reason.
Yeah.
So you want to pass in a value here instead of typing it directly in.
Yeah.
And that's where things get different, because they're like, okay, this is actually a different type now. This isn't just like a func of whatever. I've got to put this expression of func of thing on here. What's that all about? And if you need to kind of modify it, then you're like, okay, this is broken. Like, what? This won't compile. Why does it not compile? And it's because they're two completely different things. They're entirely different code paths. They do not do the same thing at all. So that's a fun one there.
Right. Look at the time. We did it.
We did it.
Did we do it?
Yeah.
Did we achieve said time goals?
We did.
3 hours later.
Now, Alyssa, are we doing a stream together next week?
Yeah, where you teach me VB live.
No. We'll need
VB
something
live.
that's like 26 hours
later. Okay, remind me what's next week so that I know. And
you wanted to do win forms, which
okay,
I
wait,
have.
why do you say that with a chuckle?
No, that wasn't.
Is
It
this
was
like
just
me asking you about VB? Is this the same type of chuckle?
No, it's like it's like I did win forms like 7 years ago. You see, I'm getting high pitched, and I said we could muddle through together, and
Right. So see, I've done win forms never. So I think 7 years ago is a lot more recent than never. So no, absolutely. If you're willing, but also we can do something other than like if there's a better. The chat was going on and on about Uno, and Ed was like, "Don't do Uno."
Hey, shh.
What? I mean, Ed wasn't like
Things
that.
we don't say out loud.
More people, Ed.
I don't know what's not to be said out loud.
I just lost friends, but that's okay.
I'm so sorry. Ed is a very big advocate for Uno. You all should know he loves it deeply.
I've done Elmish.
It's a great card game.
So I learned yesterday, I started learning WPF. And I did this because when I started learning WinUI, I hit a wall, and that wall was it's not ready yet. And so I'm thinking like next year when I really want to dive into desktop and I like do the whole Maui and the WinUI thing, it'll be more ready. So while I'm prepping for that mentally, I'm getting my juices going with WPF and XAML bits, which is what.
So you could teach me WPF because I've never done Windows Presentation Foundation. So there we go.
What the frick? Why do you know off the top of your head what it stands for? Who are you? Do you see her rattling off acronyms like some sort of wizard?
You're the one that's using the acronyms and not knowing what they stand for. I'm getting high pitched now.
Okay, we'll talk. We'll make a game plan about next week and whether or not, VB will be the topic. Oh, chat, you've been amazing though. I just want to give a shout out to chat. They've been awesome today.
They have been.
Why going backwards? Okay, it's not, I was told that WPF is not going backwards, but it's a safe space to sit for a while, to simmer while you wait for the Maui to come. Okay. I was told by a very good sources that shall not be named. Okay. Hmm?
Is it?
Yeah, it's him.
Wait, point again. Point again.
Listen, Ed, your word is law. All right. I know nothing about these .NET bits. So you tell me something and it is written. All right. It is done.
I have opinions. Somebody mentioned Silverlight in chat. I think the official it's dead was yesterday. Like people were like mourning Silverlight yesterday.
Yeah. It's
Like,
a
it
very
sunset
touchy
last year,
subject. Yeah.
Wow, it happened. We should say words.
Like
There
have a
should be
wake.
a moment of silence. Something. Someone should say something kind about
Moment of
Silverlight.
silence.
My only thing I have to say about it is I told you so.
I said something positive. Someone say something.
Is that too harsh?
Well, Silicon Orchid and I built. Well, he did most of the building. A Silverlight game for Windows 7 phone. Is that right? WinPhone 7? Yeah, long time ago. And it was featured next to Fruit Ninja and Angry Birds. So that's why it's very fond of Silverlight.
Okay.
So you're rich, is what you're saying.
She's rolling in that dough. Oh my god. Oh, something positive. The soul of Silverlight went into .NET Core.
There you go.
Positive or creepy as hell? It's like it's haunted now.
It's a spooky stream, all right? We've got ghost visitors and now the soul of Silverlight, all right? It's fine.
Yeah, you didn't say what the game
was. Yeah, what's the game?
Oh, it was called Pipes Swept Away. And I think Silicon Orchid has some videos of it on his website. So if you wanted to see, I did all the graphics for it and designed a lot of the levels, and he did all the programming stuff because we did it before I was like a programmer.
Yeah.
And you
so
haven't made this in Blazor yet?
We keep talking about it. Maybe that could be something we do.
So apparently you can like roll with the big dogs and talk all this SQL crap, and you're a graphics person. It's not fair. I say it is not fair, madam.
Oh yeah, that's Silicon Orchid did this thing called visual dressage. I did all the voiceovers for the videos of that because that was really before I was.
What does that
videoed.
mean?
So you know, I used to ride horses for a living. Yeah.
No.
Okay, so I used to be a pro dressage rider, and so Jim Silicon Orchid built a designer to design the like dance party like routines you do on a horse. So he did that all in Silverlight. It was ace. It was amazing. So that was pretty epic. So there's videos of that visual dressage, and I did all the voiceovers in my best voiceover voice with it, and I did that. So that was another Silverlighty thingy. Let me have a look at this.
So
what smab you? Yes, that is it.
Oh, that's the
one
game.
of the topics that I always get like. It's one of those loaded statements I hate seeing. So not this actual question, but usually something that goes in the other direction of it. So there's two topics I hate in development, and one is like HTML and CSS aren't languages. Like that's one side, and then the other one is there's no such thing as a full stack developer. Like those two loaded statements I hate, and then this kind of proves like that one of these is true. Like Layla said, she did all the design for the app and then can turn around and write the code for all of these cool apps that we see her do on stream. And you'd be surprised at what one developer can do. So like the apps that I used to write, I did the SQL code, I wrote the backend API, I wrote the front end and the CSS for it. It's like that was my job. I was the developer at our corporation. Like there weren't other developers. It was just me. So no. That I was saying you're implying the opposite of that conversation. It's like the positive way to express that is, wow, how do you do all those things? And there's people that take the negative route and say, nobody does this. This is that person doesn't exist. And it's like, yeah, you're kind of pooing on a lot of folks out there that have to do this for a living.
This is it. It's like Silicon Orchid used to do loads in Photoshop. He taught me how to do it when before you got fancy like CSS to make rounded corners. So he used to draw things in Photoshop and chop them up into little tiny images and then lay them out in a table. And that's how I first learned to do website design, because he taught me that. So he's a Photoshop pro, and he's done all the videos for all of our stuff, like all of these apps that he built. And so, there's a lot of developers who have multiple skills. And I think that is what full stack is. And it when people just get like, there's no such thing, and that's when they want to stick people as a back-end developer or a front-end developer. I think there needs to be more crossover, because if you're just writing in the front end with no idea about how your data set up, how can you request the type of data that you want to be able to show the thing that you want to build in the front end? I think you need to have understandings of both, and then that means you start delving into it.
Yeah. So I gave this talk that I just went through with you guys at a conference. At the same conference, I had a responsive web design talk. That was it was a SaaS talk. Sorry, it was SaaS. And that was an interesting one, because I had some crossover between the two talks, and the people that saw both talks came up and they were like, I came to this one because I liked the last talk you did. I have no clue what you're talking about. There were a couple that did, and there were a couple that were just like, I don't get the second one, but the first one was so good I had to come see both. I was like, that's good feedback, I think. Maybe I introduced them to new stuff today.
No, I think that is very, very flattering feedback. I'll just come and watch you talk about anything, ramble on, just because you do it in a good way. I think that's good.
All right. I think we've about answered everybody's questions today. Hopefully this was educational.
That's wonderful. I loved it.
It's one of those topics. Yeah, it's like, it's mind-bending because you don't know what's happening under the covers all the time while you're typing your code. It's doing all these crazy things, and you kind of neglect the fact that it's been made so simple that you don't even have to think about it. And then you learn about it and you're like, wow, this is really cool, but I probably in 90% of the cases won't have any application for this. Like, Alyssa, I guarantee you will never write like an expression visitor in your life. Like there's just hardly any reason to, unless
there is a God. I will not.
I kind of want to now. I want to find something to write it. I feel like
we're all talking
knowledge.
We had this great conversation about full stack and how people can do all. Whereas I'm on the camp of, I love UI, I love CSS, I love the front of the front end. And there's a CSS survey that comes out yearly, and it puts me to shame how much I'm unaware. I'm like, oh, that's in the spec now? What the frick? So like, I just want to master my own bubble, like if I could get that under control, then, I will gladly start learning about writing my own expression trees and using these things. But I love, see, that was something that was really cool at college, because I went to Full Sail for web dev and design. And so we were taught not only web development, but web design. And so it taught us both sides, and we were learning SQL as part of it. And so I think that's kind of goes like a nod at what Layla was saying, is you should, if nothing else, you should at least be aware of how it's put together and the pains that those people are going through on both sides. So I don't know, because there's times like on my job before this, where it would be like, why are you giving me this data? And they'd be like, well, it's easier to write it that way. And I was like, it's easier? Like what? What?
So for our folks at the Telerik team, when they wrote the Telerik UI for Blazor data grid, they needed to know about these expression trees in a very, very detailed way, because we have this thing under our It's I don't know why it's manual operations, but that's the demo it falls under. But basically what it does is it takes all the metadata from the data grid. So like any filters I applied, what page I'm on, any sorting or grouping that's been done, it will pass that to the server. So you'll see this data source request object here. I think it's being kind of fudged for demo's sake. It's doing it on an IEnumerable, but it will give this to data source request thing to the server, and that the server has another set of APIs from us. They're Teleric APIs that run on the server. So with your front end UI bits, you also get some back end stuff you could use. And when the server side gets it, it translates those sorting, filtering, grouping into expression trees. And then those get passed off to NAD framework, and it gives you a query that only returns the 10 records, or yeah, I think this is 10 in this instance, the 10 records that are needed to display this page of data. So even though they're front end devs, they know about expression trees, and they were able to like connect these two different worlds together. So you can literally in one line of code say, go to the database and give me the filter that gives me just the data I see on this grid. And that's like so amazing. So as a front end person, I don't have to even deal with any of this stuff. All I have to do is call this data source request object and hand it off to the server. And then the server folks can say, all right, I just need to pass that to any framework and it's going to do its business. I think that's pretty awesome.
Definitely. Just making life easier, isn't it? And making things faster, and you don't have to worry about that.
Were you thinking of rating? You want to pass it on?
Yeah, let's
who are we going to go?
Well, okay, so there's Microsoft developer only has 9 people watching. They're doing Azure Data Factory Power Hour. And then the Prime Agent has 350 people, something about new keyboard and raw dogging JavaScript. So there's options.
Say that on our stream.
Wait, is that bad? Was that a bad term?
Let's skip over.
I don't know. I'm like, what on earth is that? I'm having
subtitle. I don't know.
3 hours later.
I don't know. We've got 1 vote for Microsoft Dev. No other votes coming in.
I'm just having a look. But whilst we're deciding, thank you so much for having me on. I'm very much looking forward to this. So it's very that's good. That's good. Right.
Yeah, anytime. I think we're gonna do some more shows together in the future. And of course, yeah, with Alyssa as well. And stick around, or make sure you follow the channel. And you'll get alerts when we go live. Make sure you follow Layla on her channel as well. She's on a different channel. So follow her if you don't already.
Yes.
And I think we should do that raid. We're going, what, to Microsoft?
I think
There's
so, yeah.
one Lion as well. He's doing live coding Blazor as well.
Topical.
How do you, is it just like ONELION? If we wanted to raid.
It's underscore.
ONE1.
Oh, no, that's not it.
LION, like the numerical one. 1 spelt, then a 1. I'll just drop it in chat.
Yeet! Rating ONE1 Lion. I think I spelled that right. Yep, perfect. I did. Awesome. All right, I'm gonna queue up the raid. Show one Lion some love. I think we need 5 more seconds to queue it up. But thank you all. You've been amazing, and thank you, Ed. It was a beautiful, beautiful discussion.
Very welcome.
All right, let's do it. I think we rated. I'm pretty sure. I think.